Hi, I'm Susan with the Westchester Township History Museum, and I'm here at the Westchester Migratory Bird Sanctuary in Chesterton, Indiana. We are here to talk about invasive plants. So an invasive plant is any plant that is currently living in an ecosystem that it's not originally from and it's not supposed to be living in. Not only that, but it's a very aggressive plant, so it really takes that ecosystem or that area over. So these can be plants from a different state, plants from a different region of the United States, or even plants from a different country. But they really come in, take over, and they damage that ecosystem and they hurt the other plants and animals that live there. So we're going to see which ones we can find here. Let's get started. When you first go out and learn how to identify invasive plants, all you really need is your eyes and then either a guidebook or an app on your phone or tablet or a friend who knows what the plants look like to come along with you and kind of show you what everything is. But if you want to bring some other stuff, here are some other things you can bring. One, if you're going to be touching any plants, I would bring a pair of gloves so you can protect your hands from any plants that might hurt you, like poison ivy or anything like that. Also, if you want to actually remove any of the invasives, you could bring some clippers, you could bring some loppers if they're a particularly large shrub or vine, and you can bring a garbage bag, because some of these invasive plants, you're not going to want to just clip and leave on the ground. You're going to want to remove them completely from the site, from the area that you're working in. And then finally, you're going to want to bring some bug spray, because there's going to be a lot of mosquitoes, there might be ticks, you're going to be in the woods, so that'll protect you from any bugs like that. But other than that, all you really need is your eyes, and then you can get started learning what these invasive plants look like. This is our first invasive we're going to identify today. This is Asian bittersweet. It's an invasive vine that lives here now. Its leaves alternate up its woody stem. They have sort of a toothed edge to them. They're teardrop shaped. And this damages the ecosystem in a couple different ways. One, it will grow up other plants, including trees. And as you can see here, it wraps around them. As it grows bigger and bigger, it starts to strangle that plant so that it can't grow anymore. It will eventually grow all the way up to the top of the trees and cover up the tree's own leaves so the tree can't get enough sunlight to keep growing. And then that tree will eventually die, and these plants will eventually die. The other way it harms the environment is that it has these really bright orange berries that it gets in the fall, and birds eat those. But those berries are not nutritious enough for the birds. It's sort of like if the bird is going to eat potato chips all day. It wouldn't stay very healthy. So those are the two major ways this plant, this really common invasive we have here, damages the ecosystem that we live in. Here's our next invasive. This is Japanese barberry. This is a very common ornamental shrub that you might even have in your yard, meaning a lot of people planted this for decoration in their yard. It has these really distinctive leaves. It's hard to see on camera, but it has really tiny, thin, spiky thorns all over it. So this is not a plant you want to come across and bump into when you're walking through the woods. The way this spreads is it doesn't really have any predators. Deer won't eat this plant, so it can spread really, really fast and get really big and just take over from all the other shrubs or even small trees that are living in the area. It also produces a bright red berry, so like the Asian bittersweet, birds will eat that berry and spread the plant around. But again, those berries are not very nutritious for the birds, so not really an ideal snack for them. So this is one plant that you'd probably want to remove if you have it in your yard or in some woods near you that you're taking care of. Here's our next invasive. This is multiflora rose. This is an extremely common invasive in Westchester Township. You'll probably see this in the woods. If you're near woods, you might have some in your yard. But this is an invasive rose bush. So it can get huge. It can get like 8 feet tall, and the thorns get really, really big. So it is not a great thing to have to walk through if you're out walking through the woods. You don't really want this one around. It spreads really fast. It creates seeds. And it spreads through an area and takes it over, crowds out native bushes, crowds out even young native trees. And again, it doesn't have a lot of predators like those plants we talked about before, so there's not a lot keeping this one in check. So this is one you definitely want to remove if you have it in your yard or some woods that you're taking care of. Here's a very serious invasive. This is called thistle or Canada thistle. There's 2 different varieties of it, but this is a plant, unlike our native thistles, this grows out of control. As you can see, this is all thistle right here. Just a huge patch taking over this space in the sun. It gets these flowers that are very pretty, but they produce a ton of seeds. And again, there's not a lot of things that eat this. It's hard for things to walk through. It's covered in spikes, as you can see. Just not a great plant to have in the area. So if you have this in your yard, definitely get rid of it. Definitely wear gloves while you're getting rid of it so you don't get these little spikes in your hands. But this is definitely a plant you want to remove from your yard completely if you have it in there. Another invasive that's really common in this area, this is autumn olive. A really easy way to identify this plant is if you see these leaves and you think it looks like it, turn them over. They have this really silvery side underneath. Very easy way to identify the autumn olive. They also have leaves alternating up the stem. Again, just like all the others, it grows really fast, really tall, crowds out the other plants in the area. If you see one of these, you generally, once it's really big, won't see a lot of other plants growing under it. And it produces a berry, so it spreads around really easily because animals eat the berry and then deposit those seeds somewhere else. So again, another one you want to remove from your yard if you have it there. This is our final one we're going to talk about today. This is bush honeysuckle. So it is a shrub. It has leaves that are kind of opposite on the branch. One way to identify this, if you're not sure what it is and you think it might be bush honeysuckle, it does have this hollow pith. The inside of the twig there is hollow all the way through the stem. So if you cut a little piece off and you see that hole, probably bush honeysuckle, if you all have all the other characteristics. This thing grows out of control, just like all the others. It produces a berry, which again, the birds eat and spread around. This one, as you can see, there's not a lot growing under this. And actually this one was cut. You can really see how huge these shrubs can get. This is a piece of it that was already cut off and it's growing out from the stumps. So this one will need to trimmed again. You can see not a lot grows under it because it really crowds everything out and shades everything out. Also over here, so you can really get an idea of how big these grow. This back here is that multiflora rose. So we saw that really tiny one. This is how huge they can get. And they can get these huge thorns, which are really not fun to run into on the trail. So this is a really great example of how big these get and how they crowd everything else out. And it really shows how damaging these can be to the other plants in the ecosystem and eventually the other animals in the ecosystem because they're crowding out their food sources that give them all the nutrition. An added benefit of working on invasives is that you're going to get to see a lot of cool wildlife. Here we have an egret. It's probably hunting. That's probably why it's hanging out by the water. They eat a lot of fish. Now that you've removed those invasive plants from your yard, what do you do next? You're going to want to plant native plants. Here at the sanctuary, there are a lot of examples of native plants you can plant in your yard, but there's also a resource called the Midwest Invasive Plant Network. And they're going to have all kinds of resources telling you some easy replacements for those shrubs and vines you just removed from your yard because they're invasive. And then the native plants will give you just as beautiful of a landscape, but they're also going to provide what the other plants and animals in our ecosystem need to survive and thrive. If you want to see some of the plants I just pointed out up close, you can come out here to the bird sanctuary and take a hike and see some of them, and also see some of the great native plants you can plant in place of those invasives you're going to remove from your yard. Again, I am Susan Swarner from the Westchester Township History Museum. Thank you so much for joining me today.